brief tutorial on how to configure an ASA 5506. My name is Greg Carleton and I'm a senior consultant at Cobaltix. Before we begin, we need to make sure we have the tools necessary to get the job done. We need a PuTTY client so we're able to SSH into the firewall, and we need a console cable to get the initial configurations done. The console cable comes with the ASA. It's a blue with a flat RJ45 connection on one end and a serial connection on the other. I use a USB to serial gender changer so that I'm able to do this with my laptop, and it's an invaluable tool if you're working on these devices quite a bit. On the back side of the ASA 5506, there is a blue labeled console port, and that is where the RJ45 will plug in. And then you define port 4. It will be different depending on what system you have. To start things off, I like to start everything off by having my interfaces configured so that I can use SSH or alternate means besides the console to connect to the device. I prefer those means. I also like to be able to use the ASDM. So let's go ahead and we'll get working on configuring the interface. Go config T. That puts us into configuration mode. I'm going to go ahead. Actually, I am going to first give this thing a name. I'm going to give it a host name. And you can use whatever naming convention you like to. This is something specific to my world. And then from here, we will go ahead and start with the interface 2. By default on the Cisco ASA 5506, interface port 2 is the inside interface, and interface port 1 is the outside interface. I also have ran into issues where the interface itself is logically shut down. So the command to make sure that this thing is not shut down is no shut. I guess that's pretty easy enough. And then the next thing I want to do is configure an IP address for this guy on the inside. Now by default, this is actually the address that it has, but I'm going to be using this device with this address. And I give it the IP address and subnet mask. And if you notice, we're in config IF mode. It means we're configuring this particular interface. If I type Control Z, this will take me out of this. I type WRMEM, it's write memory, and it will do this. Another nice thing about the Cisco ASA, if you do config T or any command, and let's say now we're going to do interface 1, which is the outside interface. If I start to type and hit the tab key, it will actually finish the command for me if there's no others that match the keys I've already typed. So I now start gig interface like we did before. I hit the tab again, and it now shows me the complete name of that gig Ethernet. And then if I hit a question mark, it'll also tell me what the next value, what commands are available. So you don't have to totally memorize each command, because if you forget, you can hit the question mark and it'll finish your command for you, or tell you if you're typing something that makes no sense at all. So in this point, I'm going to hit 1, and then if I were to hit question mark again, it tells I have to do the slash. And then in this case, I hit the question mark again, and it's the final number of the port, right? And in this case, we're doing 1/1, which is port number 1. And you hit enter. You notice it says config IF. It means I'm configuring the internal interface. So again, just like I did before, I'm going to go ahead and tell this thing, don't be shut down. Give it a no shut, just to be careful. And then I'm going to apply my IP address to the outside. In this case, this is just a non-routable just for this demonstration and for working with this. And again, I don't like to go too far without saving my work, so I will do a write mem, and that's been saved. Now, if you want to see what you've already done, you can do show run or show running configuration. But show run, a lot of these commands, you can use a short version of it. If I hit enter, this will actually show me the configurations I've done. It tells me the version, tells me the host name. It shows that I have an enable password. And if we take a look all through this device, you can see that we've got the name IF. If I said port 1 is outside, and it has a name inside for the inside interface. These named IFs can be changed to whatever you like to call them. So if you have a more complex device configuration, and you're using multiple ports on this for different environments, you can name them to something that is appropriate to your environment. As you notice, these other interfaces are all showing shutdown, which And again, the way to bring those back up is no shut, and that will disappear. Also, if you notice, there's no name IF, which means when you name an interface, you're able to call that name in other configurations rather than typing out, gig Ethernet one slash whatever for different configurations. So if you're creating ACLs or other items, you can actually just create the ACL and refer to the name of the interface. And these are all of the default configurations that come with this device. I'm not going to go into what they all mean at this point. Right now, the point of this tutorial is to get this thing up and running for the first time. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm able to SSH into this device. And again, we go back to config T. We'll go back to config T. And I'm going to, in this case, I now want to configure SSH. So we're going to create the crypto key. And again, I have these saved on the side so I can cut and paste these for the demonstration. 2048 bits is what you want to use. You could use, if you look here under this, you can create anything all the way up to 4096. By default, our more standard is the 2048 bit encryption. Okay, and that's gonna, you really want to replace them? Yes, because it comes with a default set. I'm going ahead and I'm gonna replace them. I've now generated a 2048 bit encryption key. We now have to tell this device, we have to tell the ASA, okay, where can we SSH into? We definitely want to be able to do this from the inside, and the command for that is here. And what this means is SSH, any network, any subnet mask on the inside interface, I'm going to allow SSH. These individual zeros are the same as typing 0.0.0.0 space 0.0.0.0. And instead of doing that, they let you shorten it down to that. And this is basically saying right now, any network on the inside interface, I'm going to allow SSH. While I'm testing, I like to be able to test also from the outside. Most commonly, I will use SSH from the outside. And we're going to say the same thing. Anywhere in the world, I'm going to allow SSH on the outside interface. That's outside coming inbound. And then I like to lock the SSH version. SSH version 1 has got some security issues. I set the version to SSH version 2. And then while I'm going to be working on this thing, I kick out the SSH timeout so that it doesn't keep logging me off while I'm doing this configuration. So if I right click on this and you take a look, SSH timeout, that's 60 minutes. And it can be anything from, 1 minute to 60 minutes is the maximum. Okay, now we need to have an account to be able to SSH into this device. And that's a very simple command. We're still in the config mode. I haven't saved this yet. I will after this. We're going to use a username and create a username and a password. And for this demonstration, I'm making it very simple. Of course, we will change this later. The username is admin. The password is 123. In this case, it's an admin account. Privilege 15 is the highest level of privilege you can have on an ASA. You can do anything with that level of privilege. Typical people that use VPN, AnyConnect, or any other VPNs for these devices have a privilege level of 2. It doesn't allow them to do anything but connect to the device. So we go ahead and add that. We now have a username, an account that we can log into this device with. And we do a Control Z, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. Oop. And there we go. Next I want to do is I want to tell this device, where am I going to look up my usernames and passwords? We can tell this thing for HTTP, for serial, and for SSH connections. Where do we go to authenticate? It could be a radius server, and in this case, it can be a lot of different other secondary authentication methods. We're going to use the local database of user accounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell this device, go into config T, and tell this guy that I want everything to authenticate locally. So if you notice AA authentication HTTP, that's for the ASDM. We're going to go to the local database. For the console, we're going to go, for the serial console, we're going to go local, and for SSH console, all local. So what that means now is that the only account, we have one account on this device, so the admin account I just created is the only authentication method that we have right now to access this device. And again, I like to save my work a lot. You never know when somebody's going to bump your power cord or whatever. And then we're very close to having this thing up and functional. It's very simple to get these things up and going for the first time. We got to now tell it what our default route is. Basic networking. So in this case, I am going to tell this thing because I'm going to be using another laptop or tablet to connect on the outside for my testing. So in this case, again, this is a non-routable address. It's just something that is valid within the configuration that I already created. And oh, I got to do the config T first. And we now need to set the route to outside. There we go. So now we've told this thing route any traffic we don't know about that's not local to me out to this device. We now have a basic configuration that would actually work on the internet. Now that I can connect with this device, I want to go ahead and upgrade the ASA iOS. I like to get the latest and greatest that's known good. Sometimes you can contact Cisco, but download it from the Cisco site and get the one that has got the latest. That is and they'll advise you on what is the most stable version of the iOS at this point in time. Sometimes it's not the newest and greatest. I happen to know that the one that I'm going to install on this one takes care of a number of bugs with the current iOS loaded on this device. To look at what's loaded here, you do a show flash. And this will tell you that you can see right here, this is what's loaded, what's on this device. There's all the software, and that's basically the flash memory for this device. ASDM 752 is the latest ASDM, so we don't need to bother with that. This is a little bit older and it has known bugs. The ASA 952 LFBFF-K8.SPA is the actual operating system for this device. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and update the flash on this ASA. First, we'll take a look at what we got rolling here. And you do a show flash, and that shows us everything we've got on this device. You can do a show version, and we'll also give you a lot of good information. If you look right here, the device manager or ASDM is 752, which is the latest and greatest. The security appliance software is 952, and there's an interim release out that fixes some real bugs with this one, so we're going to go ahead and upgrade it. So the way we upgrade this thing, I have a TFTP server running. I have my Ethernet from my laptop plugged into port 2 on the firewall, the inside interface, and I've pre-configured my laptop with an IP address in the correct network so that it can talk to that inside interface. So we do a copy flash, copy TFTP flash. Okay, and first thing it wants to know is the IP address, or if DNS is enabled, the DNS address. I use IP address 192.168.1.5 is what I configured my laptop for. Source file name, I already have that saved here, and there we go. And the destination file name is going to be the same. And it is now copying that over. Now, after we're done moving this over, we need to tell this, okay, what iOS to load. Right now it's pointing to the old one. After we copy this up there, we have to tell it to boot the new system flash and no longer boot the old one. If you just tell it to boot the new one, it will first try to boot the old one, and then if it can't find it, boot the second one. We don't want that. We want to go straight to booting just the new iOS. So as soon as this is done, we will continue. And it is now completing. It has now completed the upload of the new iOS. So if we do a show, we do now do a show flash. We will see that we now have two iOSs on here. We've got the 952, the original one, and now we have the brand new one here. So first thing I want to do is tell this thing, okay, I don't want to boot the old iOS. So if we do a config T, we're going to say no boot system flash. We're going to get rid of the old one. And we're going going to tell this to boot the new one. I usually tell it to boot the new one first in case something does happen, so that was probably bad of me to do that, because if something disconnects right after you do that, you'll be booting into Armon and having all kinds of fun getting it to boot again. So do a Control Z, write memory, and we're now set to boot the latest iOS. Okay, and before we reload the server to load the new iOS, we're going to do a show. We're going to do a show run boot. And this will show us what we're booting from. So now we're booting to the new iOS designated in the that's been loaded to the flash. So now we do a reload. And yes, and this reboots the ASA. And hopefully if everything is good, we're going to come up and we'll be running the new iOS. Okay, the system has come up, and as you can see now at the console, it's just not going to dump us in the configuration. We actually have to log into this device now. It's no longer wide open. Admin, and 123 was the password we set. And as you can see, we're in a, you take a look on a very limited command prompt. There's nothing, almost nothing you can do from here. You have to go into an enable mode, okay, to be able to do anything. And again, it wants a password. I never set an enable password, so if I just hit enter, it's going to just let me through. We will set an enable password later while I'm configuring. I don't like to jump through it. I can go ahead, we'll do a config T. No. And we're good to go with the new iOS. It looks like it asked the same question again about calling home. This is not, it normally will not do this after this thing has been restarted from a load. So we're in the config mode. I am going to tell this thing what the new enable password is going to be. So we do a enable 1 2 3. Oops. Enable password 1 2 3, and now they are both the same. So if I do an exit now, the username is going to be admin. It's going to ask for the password 1 2 3. And if I do an enable, it wants a password. If I just hit enter, I can't get in anymore. I have to actually give it a password. And now we've got two different levels that we have to authenticate against, which is the way we want it. Now that we've gotten the iOS uploaded, we're ready to start working with this device outside of a console port here. We can use ASDM, and we should be able to SSH into the device. So first thing I want to do now is tell this device exactly what port is the web interface, which ASDM runs on the web port, we're going to use for that. And do a config T. And then we're going to do HTTP server enable, as you see right here, 444. That means I'm going to get a secure connection on port 444, not 443. I do that out of just as a to make it non-standard so that we can use 443 for other things. So anything from email port forwards to a web server. This way we still have that option there for us to use if we want. And then just like with SSH, we're saying HTTP inside any place in any network with any subnet mask inside, and the same thing for the outside, so that we now can configure this thing using ASDM or from SSH. Okay, so I'm now going to open another console. We're going to use SSH to talk to this device, and we'll open it with PuTTY. And again, we're using SSH to connect. The first time through, it's telling me is possible, asking if we want to accept the key. We say yes. We can then come over, log in as admin, and password is 1 2 3, and we're in. And again, we have to enable, and 1 2 3 was our password for enable. And now we're where we can do configurations. Now you can do a show run. We can do everything that we did on this console port. we now have remote access to this thing, and we're no longer tied physically to the firewall. We can do this from any place that is connected on the network using SSH, no longer needing this console port, which is great for us. So next thing we want to do is test the ASDM. If you do not have ASDM installed on your machine, that's no problem. You can download the ASDM software directly from the firewall. And the way that you do that is we will open a web browser and you will go to the device, go https://, and in this case it's 192.168.1.1, and we told it port 444, and we'll go to port 444, and of course we don't location. Bring this back down so you can see it again. And you can see right here, ASDM 5 times. You can install the ASDM launcher from here. Install, if it doesn't see Java, it'll ask you to install the Java web start. So it's all self-contained. I already have ASDM installed, so I'm not going to worry about this at this point. So next, I'm going to go ahead and open up my ASDM. And we're going to go 192.168.1.444 and admin, and the password was 123. We can go ahead and connect, and it's going to get a Java warning. And as you can see, we're now able to connect using ASDM, which is a web-based, actually Java-based application. Now this firewall has two components. It has firepower. As you can see right now, it's initializing firepower communication. That you can think about that as a virtualized system that actually runs on the ASA in parallel with the ASA firewall software. So I have ASDM open now. I mean, most things that you can do from command prompt, you can do from here. I have found that I use a combination of both. I'm working on the firewall, and I'm going to see a logical view of the firewall rules. I'll jump onto here. I do a lot of the configuration from command prompt and a lot of from here. I really believe in using, leveraging the best of whatever tools that I have available to me. So now I want to go ahead and I want to configure a DHCP server. So we're going to come down here. We're going to go down to device management. And then we are going to scroll down to DHCP, and we're going to go to DHCP server. As you can see, there's one already configured here, and it just happens that it's using what I want to be using for my configuration, but I don't want to use the entire class C. So I'm going to kick this thing out to start at address 100, and we're going to do OK. And we now have 100 to 254. With ASDM, you do an apply. It shows I have enabled it, so it will show what the command is. This is what you'd be doing if you were going to do this from the command prompt. And I like seeing every command that's going to happen when I am using this. And a lot of times, this is a lot easier than typing all of this out. All right, on this firewall, we also, for DHCP, if you can see here, we have some, we can set up DNS servers. In this case, I'm just going to set up 8.1 to 8.8.8. I also want to set up over here what my default route is for the clients. Router is 3, router 1 is and this 192.168.1.1, which is this device, so that the clients that are getting DHCP leases get their default IP addresses, just like any other DHCP that you'll set up. Name DNS server, and in this case, we're just going to put 8.8.8.8. Add that one there as well, and then we will also put, I believe it'll support up to 2 DNS servers, so after that I think you're just out of luck. You may be able to add more from command line. I haven't verified that yet. And the domain name, and in this place, domain name, and that's going to be, I'm going to call this myrouter.com, whatever. And now this is all of the scope options that you would see from any other DHCP server are configured here. You do OK. You do an apply. Here's all of the commands that are being sent, and you do a send. It's now there. Now from here you can save your running configuration as well. You can save running configuration to flash, right mem, and we've just saved it to firewall. There's also a couple other neat little tools we have here, and one of the things is you can show your running configuration in a new window, and it'll actually print out admin 123. Okay, log in, update password. Okay, and here's the entire configuration for this device that we've just done. Some of this was pre-done, but you can see where we've done our HTTP servers. It's enabled on the inside, and here's where we told it, but this was a default setting. It's only enabled on the inside. I've enabled on the inside and the outside so that I can connect to this. And then from here, you now have a working ASA that will pass traffic. The rest of this firewall rules are here. And again, you got NAT rules where you can do multiple NATs. This is all pre-done when you first start this up. So right now, this firewall is actually ready to pass traffic. Further configurations will be covered in different videos. I just wanted to show you what you do to get it up and going for the first time and get basic traffic flowing through this thing.